Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel IRTix. So today I have found another topic for you is about the USSR presidents. So that starts from 1917 to 1991. So let's start. So these are the Soviet leaders that you can see starting from the Lenin to Gorbachev. So here is the trick that goes to LSKBAG. So Lenin, Stalin, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko and Gorbachev. So this is the trick. And here I didn't write for Chernenko because Chernenko and Andropov, even these two peoples are not so important because these two were old men and they died during their rule, so they didn't implement any policies. We should remember them, but these it becomes important because in exams they may ask you these last four Soviet leaders and they can make you to make in series or in ascending order. So these, just remember this. For that purpose this is very important. So Lenin, we all know that who was Lenin. Lenin was the founder of communist regime in Russia, and he led the Bolshevik Revolution, or so-called October revolutions, the revolution of labor class people in Russia against the Tsar regimes, because the Tsar was living a luxurious life. On the other hand, people were dying, and he introduced Pravda and Iskara newspapers. Pravda, that he introduced in 1912, sorry, and the Brest-Litovsk Treaty that he signed with Central Powers. And according to this treaty, Russia already lost so many important territories to the other nations. And he laid cornerstone of communism in 1922 that lasts December 1991. And he is known for the new economic policies. In 1921, new economic policies means the central led economy or the command economy, means the government will have the rights to use natural resources and the raw materials of that nations, how to use that. So the production and the means of production was in the hand of government. So another thing, let me tell you that these points that I have made is far different from the topics, but I have written them because it's so important when it comes to examination. So these highlighted yellow points, if you are a IR student, you must know them, you must knew it, because in any exam it may ask you, and these questions already have been asked in so many examinations. So that's why I have written an extra shorts for you, an essay extra shorts for you. And Lenin, he famously stated imperialism as the highest state of capitalism. He defines imperialism as the highest state of capitalism, means where the capitalism ends, imperialism starts. So he saw capitalism as a tool of imperialism, means that you know power for Westerns, how they are colonizing these developing countries. So and he promised peace, land, and bread to his people, common people, because we know that the labor's condition and the common poor people's condition, how was it in Russia. And he founded Comintern in 1919. Comintern means his dream of a world communism, means he saw a dream that one day the whole world will be under the communist regime and the communism should be spread all over the world. And he had a secret army, Cheka, that later became KGB in 1954 under Stalin. And now comes to Stalin. He was known as Uncle Joy and Man of Steel, and his concept socialism in one country. By this concept, socialism in one country means the communism will be strengthened in Russia only. It we will not focus we will not focus outside the territory of Russia. We will only focus in the territory of Russia. So we will make our socialism strengthen here. We will boost our socialism here. So means the focus on the socialism of Russia only. That policies he had formed in 1924. And then his policy of collectivization policy. Collectivization was the agriculture policy, means just make a big land reform from the small lands. If just make a you know you know do something on larger agriculture fields. If someone has small, just take that land away from him and merge with the other another field and make a very big field, and then use some agriculture production on that. So that was known as collectivization policy, and that was introduced by Stalin. They may ask you an exam like this. And his policy of Kulaklizations. Kulaks were the wealthy class, wealthy peasantry class in Russia, and Stalin made them to to leave their wealth for the common people, for the labor class. So he he didn't like those people's, those kulaks people's class. And he also found Cominform and his collectivization policy of agriculture. And till 1971, he already did the collectivization of 90% land of Russia. And Kulaks group, I already told you that these were the wealthy peasantry class of Russia. And these great terror regimes in 19 from 1935 to 1939 means during this region, Stalin followed a hardline policies. He only selected, appointed those people in his party, though whom he liked, or whom, or those people who was close to him. And now, opium of the masses. He called religion as opium of the masses. He said he criticized religion. Sorry, he criticized religion, and he said it's a venture of capitalist. Capitalist people use religion to make slaves, to make people slaves. So it's called the opium of the masses. Means people are getting blind when it comes to religion. So in 1949, USSR launched his first nuclear test, RDS-1, and this Tehran and Yalta and Potsdam agreements. I have written that because these, they were the meeting of after the end of the, during the Cold War. Where big three powers, US had, and Britain had, and USSR had. These all three heads met during the World War II. So that's why I have written it. And now Khrushchev, we all know that the Khrushchev, he came in power in 1953 and he introduced virgin land schemes. Virgin land scheme means he will do agriculture, means he will make use of land first time agriculture. In Kazakhstan and Siberia fields, they will do some agriculture on that land. So like use virgin land for agriculture purpose mainly. That's the virgin land scheme policies of Khrushchev. And in 1956 he made a very famous speech, de-Stalinization policy, where he heavily criticized Stalin. He didn't focus on the policies of Stalin, and he even didn't follow the policies of Stalin. So he just criticized him. And Hungarian uprising that's happened during the Khrushchev time, 1956, is very important. And Berlin Wall of 1961, and then Cuba Missile Crisis 1962. It's a very important. And the peaceful coexistence policies of peaceful coexistence means he tried to stabilize a peaceful, you know a peaceful foreign policies you know during that time. And then comes to Brezhnev. His Brezhnev doctrine. Brezhnev doctrine said he will use force, or he will intervene in any nations where the communist regime is getting challenged. I mean, if it's Cuba, as you can see, that during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, how this how US intervene in Cuba. So like they will. So for example, like even in Czechoslovakia, how Russia intervened, because that communist regime was getting challenged in those nations, Czechoslovakia or Hungary. So that made Russia to intervene in those nations. So that's known as the Brezhnev doctrine. And then the Soviet intervened in Afghanistan 1979, and USSR tried to change regime in Afghanistan in 1979, but he failed. It was and he was forced or heavily paid, and this was the perhaps this was one of the reason how why USSR collapsed. And then is SALT 1 and SALT 2 that I have written here, strategic arms limitation treaty, and SALT 1 and SALT 2. The SALT 1 that was signed between Brezhnev and Nixon, and SALT 2 was signed between Brezhnev and Carter. Here I have written trick that you can use Brixen and Bricker during your exams. And now comes to Gorbachev. This guy is a very famous personality in USSR. He was known as a man of peace. When Gorbachev came in power in 1985, he launched a policies of perestroika and glasnost. Perestroika means restructuring the economy, and glasnost means openness. By restructuring means, he you know he they he implemented some policies like liberal policies of for economy. The government was losing hand from the business. Not business means, from the production, and now the production was going in the hands of, I mean, private ventures. Now any company may come to Russia and they can start a business. So restructuring the economy. Now others were also have rights to use raw materials. Now the government was not the sole or the single authority to use raw materials. And glass notes, that openness means, the media. Earlier media was not allowed to criticize government. Now media and people, they were free to criticize government. They were free to say. More freedom rights were provided to people. And then Chernobyl incidents in 1986. There was a nuclear incident, in Chernobyl plant in USSR in 1986. And this was the very famous case of, you know nuclear leakage in Russia. And this was one of the reason, another one of the reason why USSR collapsed, because that made USSR economy very weak. And then during his phase, Berlin Wall dismantled, that was created in 1961. And then end of communism in 1989, and the end of Cold War in December 1991. So here, just remember this: end of communism is different from the end of Cold War. End of communism, it happens in 1989, but Cold War ends in December 1991. And after the end of Cold War, and there was a formation of CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States. Means there were 15 independent states, among them 12 made the CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States. And these were the group of former Soviet Socialist Republican states. Means that those states that were broken or come out of the USSR, those states formed this CIS. So thank you guys. This video was fakra, And one more thing, because when I shoot this video, I don't keep notes. I just starts and I just record this. So whatever the mistake was, that grammatical mistake, pronunciation mistake, English mistake, whatever noise, even just leave everything. Just enjoy your life. That's all I want. Even I want to enjoy my life. Please let me live.